continue, I want us all, please, to bow our heads in silence for those who have lost their lives in the global conflict that's going on, and to remember those many families who are grieving today. So I would just bow our heads in prayer for them. Om. Our topic for today is grief counseling. All of us have been through some form of grief at some time or the other. Some of us have been aggrieved by the death of a person or by the loss of something that we really treasured, or by the loss of a pet. But we've all been afflicted by grief at some time or the other. So what is grief? And what is grief counseling? Grief counseling is a form of psychotherapy, and it's designed to help individuals to navigate the emotional, physical, and spiritual responses to loss, such as death, breakdown of relationships, or major life changes. It provides also a safe, confidential space to process what one is feeling during any one of the above experiences in one's life. It is a common emotional and sometimes physical response that you feel when you experience loss after a physical or traumatic event. People grieve in their own way and according to different time frames, depending on the personal attachment to what was lost. Grief counseling is carried out by a professional therapist, a psychologist, or counselor to help you work through your grief. We would love to hear from all of you this evening what your views are on grief and grief counseling, and if you have any questions. But before we do that, I'm going to now hand you over to Karuna Mohan. Karuna?
Thank you very much, Aarti. Namaste to all. Friends, as Aarti has indicated to us, at some stage we all have experienced grief, and at different times in our life, we deal with grief in a different way. So I want to open up the debate, the discussion today, because even though, a specialist, an expert is always available to help, when we build a community, we actually ensure that we all build a community in joy and in grief, in sadness, and in loss. And last lecture, we dealt with the sanskar that we perform when somebody departs, when somebody dies, when the soul moves on. And we had very robust discussion. But one of the things that came up in that discussion was dealing with grief counseling. And I think the whole idea here today is to look at how the Arya Samaj deals with grief counseling, how the Arya Samaj deals with grief. We're not experts, but as people who can empathize and people who are concerned about building a noble society, we need to begin to look at it. So I'd like to invite people to speak about it and, how, if they feel comfortable, how they coped with it and what was their experience of grief. And how did they manage around it? think if you can please share some of those ideas, some of those points. And then we have a number of priests with us, and I think they are on the front line. So it would be really nice to hear from the priests, because they perform the Antyasti Sanskar with dignity, and they on the receiving end of handling grief, grief-stricken people, and supporting people who experience a loss. Now, obviously, you don't have to speak only about losing some loved one. You can actually also talk about the grief you find around the economy, a loss of a job, how you actually cope and deal with that kind of thing. Divorce is very, very big and open these days. And when you feel betrayed, there is a lot that comes through. It would be interesting to hear from people, or how they cope with that, and what can be done, and what can the Arya Samaj do. So I'm opening it up. I'm not too sure if there's anybody who would like to say something, and please raise your hand if you'd like to do so. Reshma ji, you do quite a few funerals with people who actually live on the poverty line. Is there something you'd like to share with us about your experiences in how they cope with grief, how they cope with loss?
When I'm there with them, either when the house is completely burnt down and they, just looking forlorn and just have just moved out of the house with the clothes that they have on their back. It is, it's not words at that time that gives them any comfort. You have to stand by them. You have to either hold their hand or put your arm around them for that time. You don't offer any comforting words at that point because they are in a state of shock for one, and they haven't felt the depth of that loss just yet. So we need to stand, I know we have to stand by them the day after or the 1 or 2 days later, and then bring them back to the reality and say, okay, how can we move forward? That was when the house was burnt. And when you have families who have lost dear ones, um, again, there too, there is a kind of numbness in that first day or two. They go through the mechanisms. Okay, we got to do the funeral, we got to send out messages, we've got to arrange flowers, we got to go and see the funeral parlor, see what their requirements are. We got to go and get a priest. So in that stage where they haven't started processing the loss as such. So when I work with them, I always work with them at least a week later when when the reality hits, when they experience for the few days that, hey, this person is not here anymore. So that's the time, I'm talking about what I do, is that's the time that I have to work with them and show them that, or guide them to show that person is not going to come back, and that it's nothing that they have done or have not done that has caused the death. And you notice with some families who are really, really living below the breadline, And they go out of the way to try and make that funeral I don't know, meaningful, if I may use the word. They make sure that although you tell them that you don't need 3 kgs, I can manage with 1 kg samagri, or you don't need to make those garlands that we drape over the coffin, because the funeral parlor normally gives a bouquet. But just for them to feel that they are doing something for the person that they have lost. That is the way they deal with it in the beginning. And then it's later on, like I said, that I work with them and talk to them more about the process of death, the soul being eternal, the body will age no matter what. Even if you look at us now, we are seniors. We are all wearing spectacles, or we've got dentures, or we're wearing hearing aids. So that physical process is continuing, and such a body would not be able to continue living. So, like that, we use different examples, different ways to comfort them, to overcome, the loss that they have felt, and of course, to guide them forward. What they need to do, what uh, duties they can carry on, continue doing, so that they are occupied. And that is like occupational therapy, that they will be able to move away from that harshness, harsh truth of that person not being around.
Thank you, Reshmaji. From what Reshmaji is telling us and her direct experiences, it is quite clear that we cannot give grief a blanket description. Everybody experiences grief in a different way, and everybody copes with the loss in a very different way, depending on circumstances and depending on their own emotional makeup. Artiji, I'd like to ask you a question linked to this then. From the Arya Samaj perspective and from the Vedic thinking, how do you explain losses to people?
First of all, Karuna, I agree with Pandit Reshma on what she said. What I want to state at this moment as a Purohit, you don't go to them thinking that you're going to start off with prayer, or that prayer is the only thing that's going to help. It's not going to help, because in that moment, they're not in a mood to listen to God or prayer or anything of the sort. You, like Reshmaji has said, you've got to be there for them. You've got to comfort them. That's all they're looking for at that moment. They just want comfort. They're not prepared, or they don't want to sit and listen to a sermon. And that is what we as Purohits need to understand, that you don't just walk in there, open your Iron prayer, and carry on parrot fashion. No, you've got to understand the situation. You've got to understand how each member of the family is carrying that grief, what their relationship was with the person who has passed on. You've got to understand all of that before you even start doing your own work as a Purohit. Right? So the Arya Samaj, when we train our Purohits, they do a 3.5-year course, as you know, and then 6 months of a practical course where they learn to do the Antyeshti Sanskar. Also, Purohits must be really knowledgeable about death, about what happens to the soul and the body, about what it means to a layman. They've got to be really knowledgeable to be able to impart that knowledge to that family later on. Because you don't stop seeing them after the third day heaven. You go back, you phone them, you make an appointment, you go back, you go and sit with them, have a cup of tea, and talk to them about this. That is the role of the Purohits and the Arya Samaj, and that is how, as a Vedic priest, I would carry it out. Also, I want to say that we can't just talk about grief as in death, right? People grieve when they lose something. I've known of a lot of old people who've been grieving because they have lost their property, they have lost their homes to their children, they have lost whatever they owned, and they've been grieving so much that it has caused them to get into a state of dementia, so that they are living now without any knowledge of it, or they're living in denial. I would say they're living in denial. So that is another stage of grief, when you live in denial and you don't want to accept and acknowledge what has happened. So, Karuna, I hope that's helping. I'd like to hear from everyone
I'd
else.
like to hear from a few more people, but maybe we should open it up to ask the question, because women grieve differently and men grieve differently. And let us discuss whether expressing grief makes you appear weak, and does suppressing it give you control of the situation? Robin Bhai, do you have an opinion on this? Please unmute. Does anybody have any opinion on this? If people express grief, and does that make them weak?
Karuna ji, namaste,
Ji,
it's Ratna.
go ahead, Ratna.
Yeah, no, I think it doesn't make them weak. It makes them very powerful, which, they are actually acknowledging, recognizing what is happening, and maybe looking to you for some kind of assistance, you know? So no weakness there. But what I wanted to say actually, as a priest, and this has been my experience, I have not done too many funerals, but my intervention is so limited because you get called to come and do the funeral. You perform all the rites, the final, the antiesti, and then the havan. And in that time, your interaction with the family, you don't have the time to actually assess whether there's obviously grief, but in my experience, you don't have the time at that state to start addressing grief. You understand? Because they are still in that denial, they're still in that shock. So you're basically trying to comfort them, and exactly what Pandit Reshma said, you just being there, just holding that space and that silence for them, excuse me, is sometimes all that they need, because your words are not going to mean anything to them at that time. I might be, this is how I mean, this is what I do. I actually just hold space, and if they tell me something, I validate whatever they're saying to me back to them in a way that makes them feel they are being heard, you know? So in those 3 days, there's hardly any time to move to that grief counseling part. And to be quite honest, I think that is such an involved topic on its own. It's such a complex one that priests, as priests, I think we also need to be trained in that particular field, because it's quite a specialized field, I think, you know. So yeah, I'm just trying to say, Karuna Ben, that our intervention with them is quite brief. And I always say, I am here. Please call me whenever you need to talk or anything, but very seldom you get that call. That's my experience. Very seldom. No matter how comfortable they felt with you, it's hardly ever that you're getting that call back. Yeah, that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to say anything around this? Any other priest would like to say something? Nadira, please go ahead.
Namaste, Karuna-ji.
Namaste.
Namaste, everyone. Karuna, this is a very close topic to my heart. I hope I get through everything I want to say. But my family has experienced this for 2 years now.
In a safe
And,
space, Nadira, go ahead.
and I think grief is such a difficult thing for everyone. Because in my family, I've seen it. Okay, I cry a lot. That's just me. But I've seen it, different members of the family experience it differently. Some are angry, some are dedicated to work, some are just like passionate about what they're doing every day. And it's in a family, you have to deal with people expressing grief their own way. So for us, especially me with my training, I feel like this journey was meant for me for this 2 years, because my knowledge has helped me in such a way, has helped my family in such a way that I can't explain. And initially, I used my studying to just explain my family the anti-ST mantras and the meaning of it, because I was so privileged to know the meaning. If you go to a funeral, you just sit there and you don't know the meaning. But I knew the meaning, and in explaining my family the meaning of what the prayer was, they really it brought calmness to our family. It brought a lot of understanding. It brought a lot of appreciation for the loved ones and where they're going and what it means to us. And in some way, I still felt that, everybody on their own, they're searching for different types of answers. So in reading the Bhagavad Gita, the different verses there, because I know some of the anti-ST mantras are from there, I took the extra time to read that explanations and also explain my family members a bit more as time went on. Every opportunity we got, when we did a Havan or when we got into discussion, then, the explanations got a bit deeper. But I think what really is helping my family is that I realized that for all of us, we're always asking the question of, why am I still here? And for everybody in my family, that means something different. Why did that person in our family die and I didn't? Why did that person get sick and I didn't? And I think there was one statement that has got my family members, moving forward, because we are here for a purpose. And in finding that purpose, we can move on another day. So what I've been trying to do is to use that one sentence. Why am I here? To try to educate my family members on the Vedas and the meaning of life and the meaning of death and the meaning of reincarnation. And I think that is where our Vedas come in quite strongly. I'm very amateur on this, but I'm just using that one statement to try to build on a sort of a little talk every time I have to encounter someone who's going through grief. Because I think in my greater friend or family community here in Cape Town, people are looking to me because I've got this education, but people are looking to me for answers. And even though I don't feel like I'm the best role model because I'm still suffering myself, but it has helped me a lot. So, I just feel like the Vedas and the NTSU course has given us a lot of grounding to comfort people. And we can just burn on that going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadira. So, Nadira, the third principle of the Arya Samaj actually talks of us as Arya Samaj members reading the Vedas, reciting the Vedas, and teaching others the Vedas. So I think you've actually spelt out that, exactly how that helps you. And you pull things through from there to take things further in your own life. Thank you for that. Friends, I'm going to share a screen now, which just goes through a very simple explanation of the 5 stages of grief. Now, none of these stages are linear. They don't happen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They can occur in any order. But any person that you link up with, that you meet who is grieving, you will be able to identify one of these stages. The first one is denial. It's the initial stage. Basically, individuals believe the diagnosis is somehow mistaken, it shouldn't have happened, and they cling to a false and preferable reality. And that is where, the mind actually plays games with people. But that's very normal to be in denial, to not accept it. This should never have happened. And the obviously that's one of the big stages. The next stage is the stage of anger, where the individual recognizes that denial cannot continue because that's just the mind, thinking of a reality that they would like to see. They become very frustrated when they're angry, and people generally get more angry at people they are close to. So the nearer your proximity to somebody is, the more angry and frustrated they would become. So, it means then that everybody needs to kind of, if it's within a family, you've got to be careful and look at it and deal with it. And that's where the values of the Vedas come in, because, you actually begin to understand what life is about, what death is about, what earnings is about, what loss is about, and what your karma is and how karma works. So the third stage is about bargaining. And in this stage, basically, there's this hope that the individual can avoid the cause of grief, So, for example, if you're a doctor and, somebody close to you dies, then you feel you could have given this medicine and you could have tried this and you could have tried that. Usually the negotiation is for an extended life, and it's made in exchange for a reformed lifestyle. Now, one of the bargaining things when people go through grief is not when somebody dies only, but when people, are on machines. And basically, people want to extend the life because they just want to have some kind of change. They want to keep. Now, that is about attachment to life and attachment to people. But the bargaining stage can be quite interesting in terms of how people cope and deal with it and how they experience it, okay? Okay, the next stage that comes about is about depression. And people who get into this state are always sad. They don't bother about anything. This stage, this fourth stage, the individual despairs at the recognition of their own mortality, especially when somebody has died. And in this stage, you often find people sobbing quite a bit for extended periods of time. And obviously, if the loss is somebody close to you, if the loss is somebody who, if it's coupled with the loss of income and the loss of a whole range of things, a lifestyle, then depression gets quite serious. And perhaps if, in engaging with somebody, you note this, it might be, as Ratna was saying, important to get somebody who is a professional to assist, because we don't have all the skills to manage and cope with taking somebody out of depression. Of course, the last stage of grief is acceptance. And in this last stage, individuals come to terms with their own mortality or that of a loved one or any other tragic event. Now, if we had to link this up to the teachings that we pick up as priests, as Arya Samaj members, acceptance of loss, of death, and everything else must be on an equal footing in terms of how we accept the happy moments. We've got to accept the sad moments and keep life on an even keel. And this fifth stage that somebody in grief goes through, and that's why at the beginning I said it's not a linear, you don't go through stage 1 to stage 5, but many people are able to accept stage 5 immediately. And I think that's where we, as the Arya Samaj, needs to aim towards. And obviously not just our priests, but everybody needs to aim to it. Now, I want to take us to something interesting around, firstly, are there any questions on that? Are there any contributions on that? Any comments on those 5 stages that you observe, even within your families and within your own circle?
Namaste, Karunaben.
Namaste, who's speaking?
It's Shiromini here. Namaste to everyone.
Namaste.
Coming from a medical perspective, it's a nice
Yes.
topic. Agreeing with what Nadira Bain has just spoken earlier, I've also experienced a death in the home 4 months ago. And going through the course and the Antyeshti has really assisted and helped me and my family. Yes, the grieving process, as much as you're on that side and you have the knowledge of everything, and you're also on the side of where you're a doctor and you know what happens in the process. You're sitting here as an individual where you have to experience this within a home and within a family. So yes, it was not easy, but each day brings its own emotions. But coming from a medical perspective, there's lots of times where I have had to go to a family's home if there was a death and you're visiting, and a lot of the times again you'd find families would constantly want to reiterate what has happened. And coming from a Purohit perspective and coming from even a medical perspective, you've got to listen to the family, you've got to listen to the person on the other side. Your listening skill has to be you have to be so calm in being able to listen and take on what they're saying. It can be very heavy sometimes being on the other side as a Purohit, because it's the same story that's being relayed over and again, but that's the only time they actually go through that grieving process. And as you explain to them what happens, it makes it easier if you're in contact with the family constantly. And the other thing is, we spoke about, is it is it when you're grieving, is it something that it's a bad thing? No, lots of people have this impression, or even seeing patients, they have this impression, especially males, that if we have to grieve and cry, it's a bad thing. I cannot grieve, I cannot cry, I should not be showing the side of me, I need to be strong. But they don't understand. I mean, that's the perspective that we're given by society, and we're also trying to break that norm, that you need to grieve, you need to go through the process, because if you're going to suppress these emotions, you're going to manifest something physical in your body. And we see it all the time in practice, where patients have had deaths of kids and parents, and they've not grieved appropriately, and it's 20, 30 years down the line, and they're still struggling because they've been told that you need to not cry, or you need to be strong for your family, or be strong for yourself. And I don't agree with that perspective. So we also have to be in that place where we need to guide people when we go to their homes, that it's important to grieve. Do not suppress your emotions. Speak to whomever so you're comfortable with. And when you're comfortable, then only speak about the grief process and the depth, to take them along that. So yeah, that's my perspective.
Thank you very much, Ramani. The question you bring up is, how much support do you give a person, and how do you absolve yourself from the pain of others? And I think that's something priests need to take into account when they're looking at it, because you can't be everything to everybody, and you can't be a constant clutch. I think COVID, the deaths during COVID, the losses during COVID was a very, very good example. And it, you want to be empathetic, but you also want to protect yourself from burnout and stress and worry. So anybody has any comment on that part? Because Ratna did raise that, you do go, Aarti did raise, so did Reshma, that, you've got to continue, you've got to support families that you do the sanskars with. But beyond that, how do priests actually protect themselves and not absorb the pain of others? We're not robots, so it's something that we need to look at.
May I come in?
Sure, please go ahead.
This is the reason why we said the priests have to go for the counseling course. The counseling course helps you to build yourself up in such a manner that you're able to listen to the other, or to whoever is hurt, sorrowful at that time, and but not be part of it. You listen to it, you empathize with them. They feel that you are with them when you empathize, but you don't let yourself get absorbed into it. So when we're doing the counseling course, we get skills, we learn skills where we don't get too, what's the word, overpowered by their grief. Right? But we on the stronger side, where we listen to them, like Benji said earlier, that listening is very important. You have to make them feel that whatever they're saying is so important that you really feel for them. So my advice is for all priests to have this counseling course, take the counseling course, so that they will be able to deal with anyone who is in trouble.
It is another area, when people go through grief and loss, especially when somebody dies. There's this whole thing of having a seance and communicating with the dead. If you're in deep grief, is that a healthy thing or not so healthy? And why would that be a problem? Anybody?
Sorry, Karuna, just say that again, please.
You know, a lot of people, when they lose somebody, they want to communicate with the dead. They want to go into, you know, where the person is. They have what you call a seance. And now in the Western world, this has become quite a big thing. A lot of people go through mediums to communicate. Now, obviously, from Swami Dayanand's teachings and the perspective of the Arya Samaj, that's a no-no because it's all linked to superstitions and a whole range of things. But the point is, if somebody is grieving and they go through this kind of thing, is it healthy or is it unhealthy?
I would say it depends on their state of mind,
Yes.
right? So for those of us who know that the soul exits the body and it takes on a new one, right? And according to its karma, it may attain moksha. So personally, I'm talking about myself personally, I would not go in for that sort of thing because I know there's nobody I'm communicating with, right? So, but a lot of people believe that it happens, it can happen, it gives them some solace, it helps them to cope. And I think that is why they go, because it helps them greatly to cope, most of all. Yeah.
Ratnaji, please go ahead.
Thank you, Karunaji. Yeah, no, I was just actually going to say, you know, the person is actually clutching and is lost, feeling very lost at that time. For that person to seek some kind of solace and solution from whichever source that person feels that he or she can find it. So you know what? In as much as we don't subscribe to that, I would say whatever brings peace to you, you know, if it brings you peace, go and satisfy yourself. Remember, we are still here for you and we will be here to support you throughout the process. That would be my take on that. It's something, I think when a person is grieving and is in such a state, nothing you can say in terms of very pure teachings of the Vedas, of Bhagavad Gita, would make sense to that mind. That mind is not ready for your philosophy. So for me personally, I would just allow the process to unfold for that person, and you know at some point they're going to come back to you. You know, yeah.
So what we're saying is that nobody has a right to dictate to someone how to grieve. And we're also saying earlier on that, you know, both men and women should grieve. And, you know, they shouldn't be, you know, macho strongness in men and women. There needs to be that the grieving period to reshape yourself and to understand where you fit in the world after a loss. So, you know, and everybody has their own time for it. Friends, we coming to the end, but Nadira will allow you to say a few words. Go ahead.
Thank you. Karunaji, I think one of the other battles that the Purohits could be facing, I know in Cape Town it's quite common, is that people believe, I mean, I've only through my studying have learned that, you know, the first 3-day Hawan is actually for the family. And here in Cape Town, you know, one of the battles is that people are quite strong in their beliefs that it's their actions and their prayers and things that they are doing that's actually going to help the journey of the soul. And that is one of the battles, like, you know, it's one of the debates that we have with people. Not, I won't say debate, but I mean, it's a discussion that people feel that they need to see, come in contact with somebody who can know if the soul is happy. That is why they want to, you know, go to a clairvoyant or or have a crossover. They want to know if the soul is happy, and then if they find the soul is not happy, what can they do? I think that's one of the battles, is that people feel that they have a part to play in the journey of the soul through their prayers or something like that, which it's our battle to explain them that they don't.
I have a very nice tale to tell. A very dear friend of mine actually went to a clairvoyant, to a medium, after her sister passed on. And, like we all saying, what we do for ourselves is what we do for ourselves. But when somebody else is in grief and they want to do that kind of process and they understand it, you let them be. Anyway, she went to the clairvoyant and she came back and she says, well, my sister chased me away. She didn't want to speak to me. Now, after looking at the story for about a year, pondering over it, I realized that this was my friend's own way of coping and dealing with the loss of her sister and the grief. So, as Ratna is saying, you cannot actually force the point of view across to people. Now, my dear Purohits who are here, I want to tell you that this session was Yuvesh Sundar's idea. Pandit Yuvesh Sundar, who heads the Vedic Purohit Mandal, felt very strongly that we needed to focus and have a debate and have a discussion on this topic. Together with the Antyasti Sanskar. So we've covered it, and unfortunately, he's going to only view this on the YouTube, but I'm sure he'd be very happy with what you've said. What is coming through very clearly is that the priests are not there to just go and do an Antyasti Sanskar or a wedding or a Garbhadhan Sanskar or a Griha Pravesh Sanskar. Priests need to be developing a set of yajmans. In other words, families that they interact with, where they build a rapport with them, where, as Arti mentioned, the priests are learned people, where the community looks forward to hearing from priests and comes to them for advice and knocks on their door when there are problems, whether it's drug abuse or whether it's gender-based violence, or whether it's simply a very happy occasion where their children have done very well. So the point is that there needs to be continuous and consistent work with people that resonate with you as a priest. You need to build a community around you. I think if we understand that and we begin to do that kind of thing, and then together with what Reshmaji has raised, that all priests, besides looking at Module 6 in the SOVS training, all priests need to also, if they have that calling and they're keen to engage with people, they should do the Lifeline counseling program so that they equip themselves to deal in a professional way with people who are on the edge and who are actually in deep grief. In closing, I'd like to part ways with everybody with 3 C's that you can put into practice if you suffer loss and go into grief. The one is to choose acceptance. The second is to connect. And the third is to communicate. And I know that, in our communities, and especially in the Arya Samaj family, when you suffer loss, everybody is around you, they're with you. But then there comes a time where everybody goes and they move on with their own lives. And that is when you need to connect and communicate. So thank you very much to everybody for listening and for participating. In fact, this was better than having a person who is an expert with us. And I hand you over now to Atiji. Atiji, please put your video on.
Okay, my video is not working for some reason. I don't
Okay,
know.
go ahead then.
Okay, it's on. All right. I want to say thank you to everyone who's responded this evening and to our invitation. I think we had a very good discussion. We should be having more of these discussions because there's so much to discuss. And there's so much that we can learn from each other. And for me, that was the most interesting part of the evening, that there was so much we could learn from each other. Our next session will be on the 15th of April. I don't have the topic with me at the moment, but it will be sent out to everyone. Remember, it's going to be the 15th of April, and please diarize that. But I want to also say, all of you, no matter what it is that's bothering you, no matter what challenges we have in life, no matter what it is we've lost, it's something that we all have to go through in our lives. And I think in future, Karuna, we must look at getting an expert to talk to us about our karma and the impact it has on our lives. So that will be an interesting topic. So with those few words, I want to ask us all to say Shanti Path before we close. Om Dhyau Shantirantariksham Shanti Prithivi Shantirapa Shantir Oshadaya Shanti Vanaspatayah Shantirvishwe Devah Shantirbrahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Sama Shantiredhi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste and have a good
Namaste.
evening. Namaste.
Okay.
Namaste, Ati.
Namaste. Thank you very much, everybody.